Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Shusansha didn't have to guess to know that some of these powerful individuals before him were from the Sun Moon Empire. Else, it would have been impossible for those two provincial governors to gather so many powerful people. After all, Shusansha and his peers were going up against 5 title Douluos, and a huge number of Soul Douluos and Soul Sages. On the other hand, there were only 6 people in total on Shusanshi's side. The only real title Douluos they had was Yigayi. It was obvious that this would be a one-sided affair if they were to fight with them. The only way for them to survive was to break out of their encirclement. Shusansha took a step back and used his body to shield his mother. Even though Xuelingshuan was a princess, her cultivation was not particularly high. She was only able to attain the rank of a Soul Emperor even with her royal bloodline and the wealth of resources at her disposal. She was definitely the weakest one among all of them. Shusansha lowered his head and said, "Mother, I need you to climb onto my back. Today, both of us will live and die together." Xuelingshuan seemed to be enraged by his words. "What are you talking about? Just leave me and break out on your own. I don't need all of you to protect me. Leave now. Sansha, take your friends and leave now." While they were speaking, Xuekui, Xueling and the people they had brought along with them had begun to attack them. The 5 title Douluos split up at the same time as they covered 5 different directions. The rest of the Soul Douluos and Soul Sages surrounded Shusansha and his peers. Yigayi's eyes revealed a golden glow as the wings behind her gently flapped. Following which, she released a powerful holy aura as the 9 soul rings on her body started to radiate an intense glow. It was apparent that both Xuekui and Xueling had gained the upper hand from the current look of things. However, all of them knew that they could not afford to become complacent. This was because Shusansha and his friends were from Shrek Academy. As long as one of them was able to escape, they would all die when he or she managed to get help from the academy. Hence, they knew that they had to keep all of them here at all costs. The title Douluos assassin, who had struck earlier, suddenly vanished into thin air. It was apparent that he had used some sort of ability to conceal himself. The other 4 title Douluos occupied the 4 different cardinal directions, as they released their martial souls after taking up their positions. The title Douluos they were facing directly had a lion as his martial soul. The lion was radiating an intense fiery light. It was probably a wild flame lion. It was apparent that he was an assault soul master. The 2 title Douluos on their left and right looked almost exactly the same. They were actually twins, and they wielded the same long pole, which was probably their martial souls. The soul master at their backs looked a little strange. He was more than twice the size of an average human. He was more than 3 meters tall, and was incredibly muscular. In fact, he did not even look like a human. And this was before he had even unleashed his martial soul. Based on Shusanshi's experience, he could tell straight away that this was a defensive soul master who specialized in power and strength. His main objective was to make sure that none of them could escape out the back. Even though there were no control soul masters, the most frightening kind of soul master, among them, it seemed like they would be more than sufficient to deal with Shusansha and his friends. The wild lion Douluos, who was before them, let out a deafening roar as his long hair took on a fiery red color. Following which, his thick mana expanded as dense fire-type elemental fluctuations swept towards the 6 of them. At this instant, the 2 title Douluos at the side also made their move. The poles in their hands suddenly expanded as they raised them high up in the air. After they had completed their transformation to become 2 gigantic pillars, the 2 title Douluos slammed them down to the ground. If only Huo Yuhao were here. This was a thought which everyone shared at this instant. If only Huo Yuhao were here, they would not fear this battle at all, even if he didn't participate directly. They would be a lot less fearful with him around to command them even if they were outnumbered by their enemies. Unfortunately, Huo Yuhao was not here. They could only rely on their abilities. Shusansha let out a low growl as his body expanded. At the very next instant, he released a golden glow as the Xuanwu shield took on a brilliant golden color. Golden Tortoise's possession. The first person on their side to make a move was Yigayi. She leapt and soared upwards as she spread the wings behind her back. Following which, one would notice the countless golden sparkling particles, which were concentrating towards her body. Very soon, a golden holy sword appeared in her hand. At this instant, Yigayi looked just like a god who had descended from the skies. As she slashed her holy sword forward, a streak of golden light ripped apart the flames that were coming their way. Following which, the sharp sword light raced towards the wild lion Douluos. She did not seem to be concerned about the two gigantic pillars, which were coming their way from the sides. At this instant, a rose-colored light suddenly lit up, but it did not participate directly in Yigayi's attack. Instead, it fused into the holy angel from the back before disappearing. Shusansha suddenly tossed his Xuanwu shield upwards. Following which, it transformed into a formation of shields which protected the group of people from the incoming pillars. Shusansha also released his intense and viscous Xuanwu's domain to envelop himself and his peers. As long as the domain was present, the assassin who was hiding nearby would find his movement restricted. At the same time, all their enemies' attacks would be weakened and slowed. Even though they were going up against so many powerful opponents at once, the people from the Tang sect were able to fight against them in an organized manner without panicking. The wild lion Douluos let out a low growl before he punched both of his fists forward. At the same time, his second, third, and fourth soul rings all lit up together. Only a titled Douluos would be able to execute 3 soul skills together seamlessly. The flames on his body instantly turned blue. As he punched his fists outwards, the image of a blue lion's head surged towards Yigayi's sword light. When the image collided with the sword light, the lion's head suddenly froze in mid-air. Following which, the blue image turned pink before vanishing into thin air. Following which, the holy sword's sword light instantly reached the wild lion Douluos. Huh! The wild lion Douluos gasped in surprise as he quickly retreated. While his massive body suddenly contracted, he released an angry roar towards Yigayi and the rest. At this instant, his head turned into a lion's head as his 6th soul ring lit up. A vortex gushed out from the image's mouth and blocked the holy sword's sword light, before it started to grind the sword light away, at an incredible speed. Just when it seemed like the wild lion Douluos' vortex had successfully blocked the holy sword's attack, the wild lion Douluos felt an inexplicable sense of fear in his heart. This was a fear that originated from deep within his spirit. Shit! A matte black sword light suddenly appeared at this very instant. The position where this sword light appeared was very obscure. Because of how bright the holy sword's sword light was, the wild lion Douluos was not able to notice the black sword light. However, just when he thought his lion roar had blocked the holy sword's sword light, the matte black sword light went straight for him. What is that? It's so sharp. His lion's roar was instantly sliced apart when it came into contact with the black sword light. Even though the energy within the lion roar had reduced the power within the holy sword's sword light, the white sword light was still invincibly sharp. After destroying his 6th soul skill, the black sword light intertwined with the holy sword's sword light, as they surged towards the wild lion Douluos. At this instant, the wild lion Douluos broke out into a cold sweat. Everything was happening too quickly. Even though the wild lion Douluos was in charge of the front, he was only supposed to feint an attack. The actual plan was for everyone to execute a soul skill that was supposed to be enough to destroy all of them. They had all agreed to defeat the group of people from the Tang sect in a stable manner at minimal cost. On top of that, because of the advantage they had in their collective strength, they were fairly confident about their chances of winning. However, they had not expected the Tang sect's people to be able to release so much power at once. Even though they only had 6 people, 3 of them had come together to attack the front. Right now, it was already too late for the wild lion Douluos to unleash his martial soul true body. He could only let out a low growl as he released his 8th soul skill as quickly as possible. He wanted to use his powerful soul skill to attempt to block the sword lights coming his way. However, at this instant, Yigayi spread her wings out to their maximum before releasing a bright scream in the air. Suddenly, the sky above them was ripped apart. Following which, a beam of holy light shone down onto the wild lion Douluos from the sky. This was an attack the wild lion Douluos would never have been able to avoid. He felt his body tighten as the soul power within him began to burn furiously. The most frightening thing was how his 8th soul skill was interrupted just like that. Holy light illumination. This was one of Yigayi's soul skills, which had evolved after she had added some of the new insights she had comprehended into the skill. This was supposed to be her first soul skill. However, she had now managed to add in the silencing ability, an ability which allowed her to stop her opponent from executing their soul skills. After all, the Holy Angel Martial Soul was one of the most powerful martial souls in existence. It would not pale in comparison to Huo Yuhao's ultimate martial soul. Ever since Yigayi had become a titled Douluos, her individual fighting power was ahead of everyone except for Huo Yuhao and Tang Wutong. She was the 3rd strongest individual within the Tang sect. Even Jiuichin and Shusansha paled in comparison to her. Yigayi understood that she had no choice but to be ruthless in her methods with the current situation they were in. This was the only way that everyone could possibly survive. Hence, she did not plan to show any mercy to any of their enemies the moment they appeared before her. The biggest mistake the wild lion Douluos had made was to underestimate her. At the end of the day, Jiuichin and Nan Chochio had both lent Yigayi a hand to assist her attacks. Their attack was a combination of all 3 of their powers. This led the wild lion Douluos to believe that the 3 of them had only combined their powers, because they were not strong enough individually. In fact, he felt that Yigayi was simply too young to be a proper titled Douluos. On top of that, he could not even recognize her martial soul. He only saw how many feathers it had, and had no idea what it was. After all, not every soul master had the privilege of studying within Shrek Academy. They would definitely not have the same kind of exposure that the students had. Hence, the wild lion Douluos was bound to pay the price for underestimating Yigayi once she released her powers for real. However, a golden light was automatically released at this instant. It seemed like the wild lion Douluos was actually in possession of an invincible barrier. However, invincible barriers were not that useful in battles between titled Douluos. His invincible barrier was shattered almost instantly by the black and white sword lights. After shattering the barrier, the remaining streaks of sword light landed on the wild lion Douluos, whose soul skill had been interrupted earlier. The wild lion Douluos grunted as a wound formed across his chest. He was fortunate enough to possess a fairly strong amount of soul power and an invincible barrier. If not, he would have suffered a far more serious injury. However, at this instant, the angel Douluos, Yigayi, was already in berserk mode. She released another layer of brilliant golden light, which started to expand from her body into her surroundings. It looked like she was establishing a gigantic golden barrier around her peers. This was because Xuekue, Xueling, and the soul masters they had brought along with them had released their ranged soul skills while she was fighting the wild lion Douluos. Even though these soul skills were not particularly strong individually, their powers became significant when combined. It was still fairly threatening when so many people were to launch an attack at them. Under such circumstances, Yigayi had no choice but to establish some defensive measures. All surrounding ranged attacks were immediately reflected the moment they came into contact with her golden light. When the golden light eventually gave way, all the remaining attacks were either deflected or blocked by the last ounce of power within the golden barrier. Even the 2 gigantic pillars released by the titled Douluos at the side were slowed by the barrier before they landed on Shusanshi's shield wall. Instantly, a loud thud could be heard as the shield wall shook vigorously. Shusansha let out a grunt, but he ultimately managed to block the gigantic beams. It seemed like the group had managed to hold off the first combined attacks from their opponents, with the collective defensive powers of Shusansha and Yigayi. On the other hand, Yigayi had only just started. Just now, the barrier she had released was her own soul skill, Holy Light Spiritual Formation. Following which, her entire body took on a brilliant golden color. As the golden light intensified, she looked as though she had been carved out of pure gold. At the same time, the wings behind her back had also taken on the same color. This was her seventh soul skill, Angel True Body. At this instant, it seemed as though the holy angel had just descended from the world of the gods. Her powerful holy aura was released into her surroundings, and her opponents could immediately feel an immense pressure from her aura. Following which, her eighth soul ring lit up. A golden figure instantly split from her body, and at the next instant, it had appeared behind the wild lion Douluos. After being interrupted by Yigayi's soul skill, the wild lion Douluos was trying to unleash his seventh soul skill, his martial soul true body. However, he found himself immobilized the minute the golden angel appeared behind him. The wild lion Douluos felt as though his entire soul had been locked in position at that instant. He tried his best to resist that mysterious force. However, he was unable to break free from it. Following which, the golden image fused directly into the wild lion Douluos' body. At the very instant, the wild lion Douluos' body turned golden. As he breathed in and out, golden streaks of air were released from his nostrils and mouth. Everyone who was standing by the wild lion Douluos was scared out of their wits by this frightening sight. At this instant, a streak of matte black sword light flashed across the crowd. It seemed as though the surrounding space was frozen at that moment. Following which, everyone could hear a cry from a soul Douluos. When they turned around to see what had happened to him, they saw that his body had been sliced in two. On the battlefield, the sword fanatic, with his frightening sword intent, was always the person with the strongest attacking power. Jiuichin had drawn first blood when he released his explosive fighting power. Even though Shuekue and Xueling had retreated from them, they could not help be shocked by how Shusanshi's friend was able to kill their soul masters even after being surrounded by so many powerful soul masters. At that moment, they truly understood what it meant to be a graduate of Shrek Academy. After all, they had learned from their investigation that Shusansha was one of this generation's Shrek's 7 monsters. After successfully slaying someone with a single blow, Jiuichin slashed his judgment sword outwards again. Even though he did not manage to kill someone this time, he was able to force a good number of them backward. As the intense battle unfolded, the wild lion Douluos suddenly released a loud howl. His body suddenly released a blast of golden light. It was almost as if his soul had been stripped from his body. His pupils turned completely white as his body vibrated intensely. Huge amounts of fire-type soul power were spurting out from his pores before blood started to flow out from everywhere. A titled Douluos was actually unable to defend himself after being hit by this soul skill. This was simply unimaginable. Every single soul master was stunned after seeing what had happened to the wild lion Douluos. They could only tell that it was a result of Yigayi's 8th soul skill. Angel of Death. After the wild lion Douluos had released all of the golden energy from his body, he started to burn in the golden light, which had transformed into a gigantic beam of light. The beam surged up into the sky as the wild lion Douluos screamed in the burning light. No matter how hard he tried, he was unable to escape from the light. Yigayi released another wave of holy light spiritual formation to negate the bulk of the attacks being launched at them. Following which, Yigayi released an explosive amount of golden light again. Pairs of golden wings spread themselves one after another on her martial soul true body, as her 9th soul ring lit up. At this instant, Xueling and Shuekue started to become genuinely frightened. She's just too scary. Why does she have so much power when she seems to be only 20 years old? What kind of ability is she unleashing? Her 8th soul skill was already enough to destroy a titled Douluos. What would happen if she unleashes her 9th soul skill? Yigayi's 6 pairs of wings doubled instantly as they increased from the original 6 pairs to 12 pairs. Her aura continued to surge until it reached a frightening level of power. Even though she was releasing the same holy light spiritual formation, the soul masters with 7 or 8 rings were no longer able to damage her light barrier with their collective attacks. Her frightening abilities had already exceeded what these Douling Empire soul masters could have imagined. To be honest, Shuekue and Xueling had actually done proper research on Shusansha and his peers before they had begun their operation. They believed they had a decent understanding of their abilities. However, they had not expected this group of youthful individuals, whose oldest person was at most 30 years old, to be so powerful. They were especially shocked by Yigayi, because they did not expect her to be the strongest individual amongst the group. In fact, they did not even know that she was a title Douluos, much less a title Douluos who was so powerful. Now that Yigayi had 12 pair of wings, what did that mean? It meant that she was now an archangel. She was no longer mortal, and had developed godlike powers. Hence, Yigayi's ninth soul skill was called Archangel's Descent, which was also known as the God of Angels. An insane amount of golden light was released from her body. She could only unleash and maintain this soul skill for 10 seconds. However, she was able to wield power which could almost rival an ultimate Douluos during those 10 seconds. When she eventually became a Transcendent Douluos, the duration would be extended to 30 seconds. Even though one would not be able to do much in 10 seconds, it was definitely sufficient to kill a good number of people. As the holy sword appeared in the Archangel's hand, Yigayi slashed the sword forward as streaks of holy light rippled into her surroundings. The two titled Douluos at the side, who were wielding their poles, received the most damage from the holy light. They could only try their best to use their martial soul true bodies to counter the holy light that shone onto them. By fusing into their long poles, they fought with their lives to counter the prowess of the holy sword. When the holy light ended, only half of their long poles remained intact. The other half had been completely destroyed by the holy light. In fact, there were more than 6 soul masters who were completely purified by the holy light. The title Douluos at their rear was also knocked away by the powerful light from the holy sword. They would never have expected one person's explosive attack to be so powerful. "Run now!" Jiuichin exclaimed. Following which, a golden light flashed, and he swapped positions. When he reappeared, he was standing beside Jiuichin. On the other hand, Xueling had been displaced to where Jiuichin was. Jiang was already waiting for Xueling to appear. She immediately put Xueling in a lock before smashing him into the ground. Jiuichin's Xuanwu shield collided heavily with Jiuichin. Even though Jiuichin was able to muster his soul power in time, he was still slammed outwards. His entire body in a numb state, after being affected by the mysterious underworld quake. Jiuichin let out a war cry, as he unleashed the power of his golden tortoise. He slammed the Xuanwu shield in his hand into the ground as huge black ripples spread outwards within his Xuanwu's domain. The remaining soul masters immediately found themselves stumbling about on the rapidly shaking ground within the Xuanwu's domain. Once again, the judgment sword in Jiuichin's hand radiated black and white light as another 3 soul masters fell prey to the slash of his sword. Following which, he led the way as he started to charge outwards. A gigantic soft tendon python separated itself from Jiang body as it wrapped itself around Xueling. Following which, she held Xueling as her hostage and raised him up, forcing the soul masters to stay back. Afterward, she started to dash out from the back. In the meantime, Nan Qiuqiu's 8th soul ring lit up. She gave a cold stare as a gigantic image of her rouge dragon formed behind her back. The rouge dragon opened its mouth and released several pink balls of light, which exploded in the air one after another, as they made sure no one could go after them. The 8th soul skill of the rouge dragon Annihilation Martial Soul, Annihilation Tempest. The frightening power of Annihilation blocked all the soul skills that were being thrown at them from their backs. One soul sage, who was rushing towards them, went straight into the Annihilation Tempest, and disappeared without leaving a trace. Xuan was not stupid. She knew that such opportunities were hard to come by as she dashed out behind Jiuichin. Once again, Yigayi swept the holy sword in her hand horizontally as the holy light spiritual formation spread out to her surroundings again. Even though the God of Angels had ended, Yigayi's final holy light spiritual formation was enough to send the remaining title Douluos and soul masters flying after it expanded into its surroundings. Nan Qiuqiu immediately appeared beneath Yigayi as Yigayi fell from the sky. The 12 pairs of wings behind her back had vanished as she dropped onto Nan Qiuqiu's back. Right now, her face was unbelievably pale. After all, she had only become a title Douluos not too long ago, and her powers had not yet fully stabilized. On top of that, the God of Angels was a terribly demanding soul skill. Hence, she must have expended a lot of soul power to support her powerful attacks. After unleashing that soul skill, she was definitely out of gas for the short term. However, she had managed to clear a path for everyone with the explosive powers she had displayed. Just after Nan Qiuqiu adjusted Yigayi's position on her back, a black figure suddenly appeared behind her. The figure was wielding onto a dark purple dagger, as he attempted to plunge the dagger into Yigayi's back. By now, their opponents had unanimously decided that Yigayi, the person who possessed the mysterious angel martial soul, was the biggest threat. It was precisely because of her that they were unable to gain an upper hand over Shusansha and his friends. Hence, the assassin had decided to get rid of her first. In fact, this assassin, who was also a titled Douluos, had been hiding for a long time. Right now, after seeing how an opportunity had presented itself to him, he finally made his move. However, just when he was about to successfully stab Yigayi, a figure suddenly appeared between him and Yigayi. This figure released a powerful golden glow that managed to block him. The person who had helped Yigayi block the dagger was none other than Jiuichin Nan. She had used her fourth soul skill, Invincible Golden Body. While the titled Douluos was momentarily stunned, a gigantic pink hand appeared before him. It was the hand of annihilation. Nan Qiuqiu was enraged by what the assassin had tried to do, and immediately unleashed an attack at him. Following which, Jiuichin Nan's soft tendon python was also released in his direction right after the hand of annihilation. The python was able to use all of Jiuichin Nan's soul skills. That was what made it so powerful. To be honest, Jiuichin Nan's spirit was the most practical amongst all of them. The soft tendon python swept its gigantic body sideways to force the assassin back. Even though the hand of annihilation had been neutralized, it had bought precious time for the group. At the end of the day, the palace was within Douling City, the capital of the Douling Empire. Even though they had employed soul tools to conceal the explosive battles which had unfolded within the palace, they would still have a chance of surviving once they escaped from where they were. As long as they could alert the troops who were stationed around the palace, they had no need to fear these enemies. Shusansha slammed his shield angrily at the wall as he knocked down a huge patch of the wall of the newly rebuilt palace. Shusansha had never wanted to let Xuekui go. With his current cultivation, Xuekui was nothing in his eyes. A normal soul sage had no chance of resisting a soul Douluos trained by Shrek Academy. On top of that, Shusansha had almost attained the rank of a titled Douluos. And there was a reason why he was called the Eternal Defense. Shusansha raised his huge hands before sweeping them at Xuekui. This was the mutated ability of the Xuanwu displacement. As the golden tortoise behind him flashed with golden light, a gigantic golden hand appeared on Xuekui's body before reeling him backward in a violent motion. However, at this instant, Xuekui's and Xueling's bodies suddenly released a similar glow. Two streaks of silver light flashed as both of them vanished at the same time. Teleportation. When did they get a hold of this kind of soul skill? No, that can't be it. It didn't seem like a soul skill. It seemed more like the power of a soul tool. Shusansha was startled by what he had just seen. However, he knew that now was not the time to worry about it. He believed that he ought to dash out first. As he raised the Xuanwu shield in his hand, he tried to dash out of the hall. As long as he was able to leave this compound, there was a chance he could call for help from the army. However, just when he had taken a step forward, he was thrown back into the hall at the next instant. A low humming sound could be heard as a bright orange light illuminated the hall. Class 9 Soul Engineer. There's a Class 9 Soul Engineer outside. Shusansha growled angrily. At this instant, his other companions led by Jiuichin had arrived by his side. They arrived just in time to watch him get knocked back. After hearing Shusansha mention a Class 9 Soul Engineer, a grave look formed on everyone's faces. If they were going for a one-on-one battle, Shusansha would not have feared a Class 9 Soul Engineer. After all, he would definitely be able to put up with the Soul Engineer's attacks with his powerful defensive abilities even if he were not able to triumph over him. On the other hand, he might just be able to take down the Class 9 Soul Engineer if an opportunity arose. However, the situation before them was completely different. After all, there were so many soul masters against them. Even though the wild lion Douluos had died, there were still 4 titled Douluos in the hall. While 2 of them might have been injured and weakened by Yigayi, they still had a fair amount of fighting power. Besides, they still had an assassin who was also a titled Douluos, as well as a titled Douluos who specialized in defense. Now that a Class 9 soul engineer was waiting for them outside the hall, it was near impossible for them to escape. How? What are we going to do? After releasing a series of powerful attacks, Yigayi's soul power had been completely sapped. Even though the others still had a substantial amount of soul power, it was going to be very difficult for them to repeat their previous performance. Now that Yigayi had lost her fighting power, and they had to protect the relatively weaker Xuan, things had started to look very bad for them. Xueling's cold voice could be heard from the outside. All of you are going to die here. If not for my teacher's teleportation bag, all of you might just have been able to escape successfully. However, we have planned for the worst. Hence, all of you are bound to die here. Kill them all. They are out of energy. Right now, there were still more than 20 soul masters alive. The assassin had also revealed himself, as the 4 titled Douluos gathered the soul masters towards the group of individuals from the Tang sect. A look of despair started to form on Xusanxi's and his friends' faces. Nan Qiuqiu gritted her teeth, as she put Yigayi down onto the floor gently. Following which, she put on her icy war god's armor. Even though her icy war god's armor could not be compared to Huo Yuhao's, it was still able to give her powers, which would put her almost on par with a titled Douluos. Xuan might not possess a wealth of battle experience, but she still knew what to do right now. She understood that she would only burden the team if she were to try to get herself involved in the fighting. Hence, she stepped back to look after Yigayi. Right now, Yigayi was sitting on the ground with her legs crossed. She was holding 2 milk bottles, and completely ignoring everything that was happening around her. She was trying her best to recover as much soul power as possible. It was already quite difficult to break out from their encirclement right now. All they could do was to try and win their fight with these enemies. It seemed like the Class 9 soul engineer was not planning on coming in. After all, it was best for him to fight in a spacious environment. It was definitely not wise to fight a powerful soul master within a confined space like the hall. On top of that, everyone believed that the soul masters inside would be sufficient to deal with the remaining people from the Tang sect. Xusanxia revealed a cold look on his face, as he wielded his Xuanwu shield and moved in front of Nan Qiuqiu. Jiuichin and Nan Qiu stood by his side, while Jiang Nan stood right behind him. The 4 of them had taken up positions to form a simple battle formation. The 4 titled Douluos moved forward slowly, not wanting to rush into things. After all, the group before them had left a deep impression on them after witnessing their explosive power. In just a few moments, they were actually able to take down a titled Douluos. Even though their titled Douluos had also lost her fighting power temporarily, it was still completely different from being taken down directly. In addition, the powerful titled Douluos was still trying to recover her soul power. Even though they did not want to give her too much time to recover, they did not dare to be too hasty. After all, everyone only had one life. If they were to take a risk with their lives, they might just die. Now that they had established an absolute advantage over them, they would definitely not do something so foolish. The Soul Douluos and Soul Sages behind the 4 titled Douluos started to unleash their martial soul true bodies one after another. It was only when they had unleashed their martial soul true bodies that they could release their strongest powers. This was something they had to do, to bulk up their overall fighting power with their martial soul true bodies. At this instant, an exciting battle was about to unfold. The tension in the air was palpable. The 4 titled Douluos did not unleash their martial soul true bodies, because they wanted to be more agile and flexible with their moves. After all, they simply had to block the attacks from Xusanxia and the rest. The rest of the attacking work could be done by the Soul Sages and Soul Douluos. Their attacks would be more than sufficient to overwhelm and kill them. Their tactic was truly vicious and powerful. After all, the group from the Tang sect could not even retreat. All sorts of strange and peculiar martial soul true bodies started to form before their eyes as the atmosphere got even tenser. Shu Sanxi's body radiated a powerful glow, as the Xuanwu shield in his hand radiated a brilliant golden glow. As long as his opponents made their move, he would instantly unleash his Xuanwu true body. He was confident that he would be able to hold off his enemies' attacks for a substantial amount of time with his Xuanwu true body. After all, they did not call him the Eternal Defense for nothing. While they wanted to kill their enemies, they were not sure how many they could take down before the enemies killed them. Since they might not be able to leave, they had decided to take down as many of their enemies as possible. Just when the battle was about to break out between both parties, a cry could be heard from the outside the hall. Huh! After hearing the sound, a worried expression formed on the four titled Douluos' faces. After all, everyone in Shu Sanxi's group was in the hall. The only possible source of the scream was from their own people. That also meant that Shu Sanxi's reinforcements could have arrived. Under such circumstances, none of them dared to withhold any of their powers. The four titled Douluos let out a battle cry in unison as they charged towards Shu Sanxia. The soul sages and soul Douluos behind them also released their soul skills with every ounce of strength they had in their bodies. At that very instant, all sorts of soul skills swarmed towards Shu Sanxia from all directions. After all, Shu Sanxia was the only one with respectable defensive power. The rest of them might be strong offensively, but they were definitely not as skilled as Shu Sanxia in terms of defensive power. After Shu Sanxia was taken down, they would definitely be able to kill the rest of them in no time. This video will end here.